If your child's behavior can get under your skin sometimes and you wonder if they're out to get you, this episode is for you. So, we're going to talk to you about how your child's behavior is a way for them to communicate with you. They're not out to get you, they need something from you. And that can be really hard when they get under our skin. So, whether they are screaming, that they are hitting or biting constantly, they refuse to get dressed, or that they're just flat out ignoring you, your child is telling you something. And that's what we're going to talk about today. What are they actually trying to tell you? For those who don't know me, my name is Danielle C Baker. I am the founder and CVO of Being Connected. I'm also a registered early childhood educator with over 20 years experience in the field. I help parents and educators navigate the realities of what parenting is today, but don't get it twisted. When you're working with me, we're putting the child's needs first. So we're going to have to put our ego and pride aside, and let's get to it. Hello, 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 and welcome to the Talk to Danielle podcast. I am your host, Danielle C Baker. And before we get started, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to whichever channel you're listening or watching from. And of course, this is season 4. So I do invite you to have a look at the previous 3 seasons. There may be some topics there that resonate with your reality today. They are timeless, so whatever is out there is good for you today. I invite you to go have a look and check that out. And we're gonna jump right in. It is absolutely, oh, I can't find the word when your child gets to you and then they just know which buttons to press, and it doesn't matter how old they are, which age range they're in, they are going to get it, and you're just convinced that they're out to get you. And this episode is really important because it's the foundation of my work. We often talk about how children have 100 languages and only one is spoken. So there's about 99 different ways that your child will communicate with you. And because they're not actual spoken words, we tend to ignore them. And that's one of the biggest mistakes we make as parents. We're completely cutting out communication. So it's important to look out for that. Any little thing, it could be whining, whimpering, screaming, constantly crying, rough playing. So if you have a child that is playing really nice and just gradually starting to get really rough with the toys, like, and then the toys start flying, they've been telling you this entire time that something wasn't right. So we have to look at that. We kind of have to play the detectives as parents and figure out what our child is trying to tell us. And this is wonderful. This is the work that I love to do. And this is pretty much what I specialize in is body language because it speaks so much louder than words, especially with children. But you can actually, once you're tuned into your child's individual nonverbal languages, you are able to stop behaviors before they actually happen. And that's where the magic happens. As a parent, you really are able to create this connection with your child because you're able to stop the behavior before it actually happens. Now, this sounds all great with, rainbows, unicorns, and butterflies, but the reality is our children will trigger us, and their behavior specifically is going to trigger us, especially when we feel disrespected or if we feel like we're being manipulated by our mini-me's. So it's very important to know that, and it's perfectly normal that we will react, and our first instinct when our children are acting up is to stop the behavior. But now that we know that a behavior is just a symptom, it's a way to communicate. It is a language that our children are speaking. When we stop the behavior, we're actually cutting out communication completely with our children. We are stopping them from communicating with us. And so, unfortunately, the message that we're sending out when we do that is we're telling our children, your needs are not important to me. And that then translates to you are not important. So that is devastating. That's definitely not our goal. This is not what we want to do. And it's why it's so important for us to be aware of how we are triggered when our children have behaviors that we cannot tolerate. and to take a step back and say, okay, what is my child really trying to tell me right now? So we really need to move away from why is my child acting this way and move it towards what is my child's behavior trying to tell me right now? Again, behavior is a language. So are you listening to your child when you see these behaviors? I'm going to walk you through quite a bit of different steps that can help you trying to translate your child's nonverbal communication. We do have to remember that behavior is a form of communication. And one of the biggest myths in parenting is to think that behavior is a choice. Now, it can be, but when it comes to children, it seldom isn't. So when we are saying, or when we hear somebody saying, this child is out to get me, this child is pushing my buttons, they're doing it on purpose, they're trying to provoke me, you have to understand that children don't do that naturally. That would be a learned behavior. So if that's what your child is really doing, that's something that you taught them to do. And that's a big pill to swallow. So if you think that your child is really trying to manipulate you or control you, uh, you need to check yourself. And if you're hearing the parents, the uncles, the aunties who are saying that you're too soft with your child, you're letting them walk all over you, we're talking about a 2 year old, let's say, then no, that's not what's happening. And the person that is making those comments is telling you how they are. It's showing their character. So let's not project that onto our children. So again, just remember that when it comes to behavior, it's not necessarily a choice for children. It's just the only way that they can express themselves. The reason why the behavior becomes one of the major forms of communication for our children is because they don't yet have the vocabulary to explain or to communicate what they're feeling or what it is that they need. So they're not necessarily able to say, I'm overwhelmed, or I don't understand, or I'm scared, or I don't know how to handle this. If you think about it, adults have a difficulty with this still. Most adults do. So we can't expect children to be able to process that. They haven't experienced it yet. And they may not be around adults who can teach them how to experience these or how to find the words for it. So you need to understand that that's why the behavior is not a choice at this point. It's the only way they can express it. When I'm saying that children can't express, I'm overwhelmed or I'm scared or I don't know how to handle this, think about how adults handle these. We often will go quiet. We'll start shouting. We will completely shut down. We'll avoid people. We'll become impatient, something that is usually out of character for us. So children will do the same. It's just that their behavior triggers because we expect them to handle them like adults. They're not there yet. We need to teach them that. Another thing that we really need to pay attention to or to realize is that the little things that set off our children are huge to them. So it could be a little something that happened that was not planned and they lose it. And we're thinking, well, come on, don't make it's not such a big deal or stop being a baby. We have to understand that they are experiencing these little challenges for the first time. And so it is huge for them. So we cannot belittle what they're feeling. We cannot be gaslighting them into thinking that their emotions are not valid or that what they're feeling is over the top because it's not to them. Their behaviors are telling us where they are emotionally. We need to be listening to these behaviors in any way that we can so that we can teach them how to handle this so that they become solid as adults. Now, at first, this is not going to be easy. So I'm going to give you some examples of how complex this can be and why we need to be patient. A little bit like when we have a newborn and we have to figure out why they're crying, right? There's a little bit of trial and error there. And if you're not used to taking a step back when it comes to your child's behavior, if you're used to just trying to stop the behavior and not going a little deeper, you're going to need some practice as well. It's a little bit like working a muscle. So I'll give you some of the most common ones that are the most disturbing, I think, or that bother parents the most. We'll start with when a toddler, let's say your toddler is throwing food, right? That can be quite bothersome. So you have to start. Every child is different. So we got to start with that. Every child is different. So when your toddler is throwing foods, it can mean many things. And that's when you need to play the detective. Is first thing is they could be just done eating. They're done eating. I don't need this anymore. So they throw it. It'll be time then to teach them what to do or what is expected when they are done eating. They could be seeking connection. That is a huge thing, especially with the younger ones. If they see that when they're throwing food is when they can get your attention. If you're distracted with other things while they're eating and they manage to throw food one day and realize that, oh, mommy or daddy, come and spend time with me, even though it's not necessarily a positive interaction, they realize that they can get your attention then. So we have to be careful how we react to that because what are we teaching them? Do we teach them that they need to be disruptive to get our attention, or do we want to give them attention for the positive moments? So that would be another thing that they could be seeking connection from you. They could just flat out be too tired. We overschedule our days. We overschedule our children. We try to stretch our times off. We could have been late getting the food. They could just be too tired to eat. So you have to look into that as well. Or you could have a very, very smart child, a little scientific baby that is just experimenting cause and effect. What happens when I drop things? They're experiencing gravity, they're experiencing your reaction. So you must have had that before where babies throw Cheerios on the floor. You pick them up, they think it's funny, and then they throw it again, and you're like, ah, and they think it's funny, they think it's a game. So there's the cause and effect there, but they could also be exploring their world a little bit further. So it's not necessarily a negative thing. We could just redirect that energy into something more positive and less disruptive for you. So the the behavior in this case, when your toddler is throwing the food, the behavior is the same, but the reason for throwing the food are completely different. So this is where it gets complicated. And if you're not taking the time to ask yourself, what is this behavior telling me? You're not going to be able to figure out why your toddler is throwing you food. And you will eventually come to the conclusion that they're just doing that to press your buttons, to push your buttons, to get you over the top, to get you angry. And that's not where you want to be as a parent. Why understanding matters so much, because that one behavior may mean different things at different times. And as you think you figured it out, your child will mature and evolve and the behaviors will change. So you have to be constantly looking beyond the behavior and really asking, what are they trying to tell me with this? It helps you to stay calm in the situation as well. It kind of diffuses the possible explosion that will come out of you if they keep pushing your buttons. So when you're taking a look at what's behind the behavior, you have to start by asking yourself, what is really going on here? Don't automatically assume that it means something. This is something that over the years, especially working in a daycare setting, in school settings, I would say 99% of the time, the reason behind the behavior wasn't what the adults thought it was. So I'll give you again some common examples here just to give you an idea of what to look for. So if you have a child that's refusing to put their shoes on, it could be that they're seeking independence. Again, children are very programmed, or we program our children very tightly. And so they could be seeking independence. They want to figure things out on their own. They want to take the time to process what they're learning. This will happen with your scientific brain. When you have very intelligent children, they need that time to process and figure out how the Velcro works, how the laces work. So they could be seeking independence, and we need to give them time for that. So if we're rushing them, we're going to get a behavior. We're disrupting their learning. So it would be the equivalent of if you're reading a really important document that you need to read for work for the next day and your child keeps coming to interrupt you. You will eventually lose it. So it's the same. If you're interrupting their learning with the shoes, that could be a thing. They could also be overwhelmed. It happens a lot. Again, we're like, go, go, go. We are rushed. We are rushing them. So it could be too much. Maybe they don't quite understand how it works. We've told them 100 times to put their shoes on, but we've never actually taken the time to show them and do it with their hands to show them how they can do it so they can wrap their fingers around that. So that could be another one. The other thing too is that that transition could the transition time, they're putting their shoes on to go somewhere, so they went from doing something to having to put their shoes on to go somewhere else. That transition is not working for them. Either they don't like it, maybe the expectations are not clear, maybe the transition, the steps to it are too complicated for their age group. So it could be a developmental thing. And it's just the transition is not working for them. So you could think, how can I simplify this for my child and make it easier? They often feel out of control. So they'll want to take control and they know they can control you if they melt down while they're putting their shoes on. So looking at what's really happening, what is the reason behind this will help you to identify why it's so hard, why you have to fight every single morning to get those shoes on before you head out the door. Another example is if your child often hits or bites. This is very disruptive, and it's something that we will react to because now we're hurting another child or we're hurting another person. And then the fear of being judged as a bad parent or my kid is a bad kid, that kind of thing kicks in. So we get very reactive when it comes to that, especially if it's repetitive. But this will often mean, if you're asking like what does this really mean, what is really happening here, it could be that your child has no emotional regulation, which is usually what happens. They don't know how to process the emotion, and that's just the first thing that happens. It could be a sensory thing. It's just, just like when a child is teething, they just tend to bite. It soothes them for some reason. So it would be the same. It's just one way for them just to punch. It's quick, it's easy, and I got it out of my system. So it could just be that there is no emotional regulation. So we need to take our time there to teach them how to react when they're emotionally dysregulated so that they will know for next time what to be expected. They could also be frustrated or overstimulated. Sometimes there's just the lights are just too bright. It's too loud. There are too many people in my bubble. So it's often just a very quick reflex reaction to just hit, get out of my way, stop talking, stop yelling in my face, that kind of thing. And it could just be, if you have sand in your toes at the park and this kid is just yelling in your ear, it's just too much. You grab the mouth, you shut up. That's their way to say that. There's a lot there behind it. So always ask what's really happening here. My child hit, yeah, that's not cool. We need to take care of the child that was hurt. But what really triggered that behavior? There's always a reason behind it. We need to help that child. One of my favorites, and the one that I deal with the most with the parents I work with, is when your child says no. The terrible phase of the no, when they just refuse everything you ask them to do. That will often mean that they're testing their independence again. They're trying to see what their limits are, and if you will stick to your limits. If you're not consistent with the limits and the boundaries and the expectations, your child will test you on that. They could also be feeling powerless. The one main reason why children will say no or refuse to cooperate with you is because it's the only thing they can control in their life. Everything else is controlled by the adults around them. So when they get to an age where they just want to become their own person, they want to explore this new world that they are discovering, it is the only thing they can do to feel like they're in control of at least one thing in their life. And boy, do they bank on that. So just remember that it's just most of the time is because we feel out of control. We do that as adults, so we can't be surprised that our children will do that as well. It's a perfectly a natural reflex, I guess I could say, or a reaction from us. They could also just be tired. How many times do we are expected to do extra work at our job, or we have to do extra work at home, and we're just like, no, don't want to. I'm tired. I will often joke around like that because I work with young children. I will imitate their reaction, but there's more coming. There's another report that we need to do. There's observations that are coming. There's some inspection coming through. And I was just like, oh, no, I don't want to. It's the same thing. So oftentimes is because they're tired or they feel like it's the only thing they can control in their lives are usually the main ones for that one. Just keep that in mind. There's always something behind. What is it? If it is that they feel out of control, what is it that we could open up to them? So we have a hard time putting the shoes on. They keep saying no. They keep taking them off when we put them on for them to help them feel like they are in control, but you're still getting those shoes on. Get them to pick the shoes. Do you want this one or this one? It's a closed a closed decision. You decide. The goal is still to put the shoes on, but by giving them the sense that they have control over which shoes to pick may help you. That's just a little trick of the trade. And all of this, the main thing to remember is that behavior is information. It's not the whole story. So your child hits, it's not because you have a violent child or an aggressive child. There's a story behind that and you need to find it. So the behavior is actually just data. You need to kind of process this data to figure out what it is that is really happening. There is always a need behind the behavior. That's what I was saying earlier, that the child that is hitting or biting needs our help too. And we tend to overlook that. So if we're constantly just reacting to the behavior, we are missing the real reason or the reason that's hidden behind it. We are only going to correct the symptom. We're not correcting the cause of that symptom. And it's very important. Um, the other thing that is very important to remember here, because a lot of people, especially with gentle parenting, there's a lot of misunderstanding on that. We are not ignoring the behavior here. That is very important. There is a teachable moment. It is our job as parents to teach our kids how to behave the way that is expected, or how to react the way, or how to handle the situation in a more positive way. So we're not ignoring the behavior. There is a learning and a teaching moment there. We just can't do it when the child is dysregulated. It doesn't mean that we are ignoring the behavior. It just means that we need to understand it first and then we can correct it. So this may feel like a lot for you to handle, and especially in a situation where you get very reactive with that you have to act very quickly, like biting or hitting. Obviously, you need to react right away. You need to do something. You can't just be like, "Oh, let's figure this out right now. What are you feeling?" So there's steps there, but I find that there's something that works very well. I've been using it for over 20 years, and it is a game changer in trying to figure out what the cause of the behavior is. The way that I do it is the pause, observe, and respond is kind of the framework that I use. So the pause is really for you. So important. Our children are learning from us. They're learning how to behave by watching us. And they also co-regulate. They don't have their own regulating system yet. So they piggyback off of us until they can create their own. So the pause is for you to check your own nervous system before you make things worse. And that part is very important. You need to notice your own nervous system because your child will be co-regulating with you. If you are reactive, your child will be reactive as well. I also have another episode on self-awareness for parenting. This is the whole part of breaking generational cycles, uh, is that self-awareness of how does my child trigger me? How does that feel in my body? And what can I do to not be triggered so that I don't pass that down to my child? So I invite you to have a look at that. It is in season 4, so you could check that out. The second step is to observe. So there's a very specific order in which you could do this. And the first one is what happened? Okay, what actually happened? What happened right before? What was happening? If your child is starting to throw toys, very seldom is it just like that. there's other warning signs before. Maybe they were whining, maybe they were calling you, maybe they were playing with something because they were waiting for you to come and get them, and it's just taking longer. There's so many different reasons. So you could hear the whining, you could feel that play getting a little rougher. These are all signs that your child is about to throw those toys. So what happened just before the behavior? Uh, is it unusual? Is it an unusual behavior? We also have to look at that. Think about it in the terms of, if that had happened to me, how would I have reacted? Or is this not something that my child usually does? If your child is behaving in a way that they don't usually behave, that could be a huge indication that there's something else that triggered them. So you could look into that as well. Now, there are four main categories that can help you. These four questions will help you a lot in determining what that behavior is. The younger they are, the stronger those categories are. But the first one is, my child hungry? We're going with the basic needs here. So, is my child hungry? Is my child tired? Is my child overstimulated? Or is my child seeking connection? These are really the four main things that children look into for their adults, that the adults that take care of them. So are they hungry? Are they tired? Are they overstimulated? Or are they just really need connection? You could also look at an episode that I did on screens. Very important to have an article on that, on the fact that if we're always with our phone when we're with our children, we're not creating the connection that they are seeking. So always look for those main characters. If you don't know where to start in trying to figure out what the behavior means or where it came from, always ask, are they hungry? Are they tired? Or are they overstimulated? Or are they looking to connect with me right now? And this is the only way they know how to do. Last part is to respond. So you need to meet the need. What is the need? If my child is hungry, okay, let's have a snack. It's time for a snack. Um, but you also have to maintain the boundary. So this is where the teachable moment is, and this is where I'm going to be very persistent on saying that you need to have connection with your child before you can correct or before you can teach them the correct behavior. And so it is very important that you make it very clear that there's certain things that you are not going to tolerate. But before you can make them understand that, you need to have that connection. So it could look something like this. If you take a pause, your child's hit someone or hit you by take a pause and say, I can see you're really frustrated, but I will not let you hit. That is not acceptable. So by saying that, you're identifying the emotion that they may be feeling. You're telling them that you are noticing them, you're hearing them, but that's not acceptable. All right. And then you teach them other ways that they can manage this frustration. They will watch you how you manage your frustration. So this, when I said earlier, you're going to need to check yourself. You need to check yourself. That self-awareness is so important, that when you're frustrated, how are you reacting? Because that's what they pick up off of you. So you're getting mad at them for doing what you do. Uh, that's just messed up. So let's just take a pause, saying, okay, I notice that you're frustrated, but there is no way you will ever be allowed to hit. It's not one or the other, it's both. You meet the need, but you also set that boundary. It's not one or the other. Connection will always come first. Again, I have to say that so many times. If your child does not feel safe, does not feel connected to you, they will not be able to respond the way that you're expecting them to. And they may actually escalate the behavior. So connection first. They need to know that you still love them, that they're still important to you, and that their needs are important to you. That's your job as a parent. So be very careful with that. This may sound quite overwhelming for you because it is detective work, but it's no different than when you're first starting to communicate with your newborn and understanding the different cries when they are wet, when they're hungry, when they're cold, when they're scared, when they're sick. It's a little bit the same throughout the stages of their lives. So you have to remember that you're not looking for perfection here. That does not exist in parenting. There is no perfect parent, there is no perfect child. What you are looking for is a child that can understand themselves. You want a child that can trust the adults around them. You want a child that feels safe enough to learn and to make mistakes. And that is the goal, right? So you want to move away from my kid doesn't have meltdowns. You want to go into my kid knows he is safe even when he's struggling. That makes a huge difference. If you think about it, just feel it in your body when you say the difference. My kid doesn't have meltdowns versus my kid knows he's safe even when he's struggling. And it's just a imagine if you felt like that when you were a child making mistakes. How would you have liked your parents to respond, right? So I will leave you with that. I am going to leave you with some homework because you know I always do. We got to start somewhere, right? And I'm all about those micro wins. Start really small. So for this week, I would like you to choose one behavior you're noticing in your child. It doesn't matter how old they are. One behavior, just one. And this week, I want you to go from how do I stop this to what is my child trying to tell me? So when that behavior happens, just the one, when that behavior happens, instead of trying to correct it right away or how can I stop that right now, go, okay, what is my child trying to tell me? And then we're going to go into the data and you're going to have to write it down. You're going to have to write down the behavior. You're going to have to write down what happened before. What was the context before the behavior happened? Then you write down possible feelings. Again, I'm not big on assuming what that could be, but we do also need to help our child identify their feelings. So, what are the possible feelings behind this behavior? Then I want you to write down how you responded to the behavior and then how you would like to respond next time. So, what is the behavior? What happened just before the behavior? What are the possible feelings hidden behind that? How did you respond to the behavior? And how would you like to respond differently the next time the behavior happens? So, you're just going to become the detective of your child's hidden language. It will eventually get easier. And as you note this, you're going to start seeing a pattern. And that's how you're going to be able to correct it. It'll be nice and positive and easy, less stressful, less traumatic for your child. Your child is going to feel safe, seen, and heard with you. And that's the spot you want to be with your child. So take your time with it. I know it seems like extra work, but make sure you note it. You're going to see that pattern come through very quickly. That's what I'm going to leave you with. Just don't forget that every behavior has a story. Sometimes that story will be frustration, sometimes it will be fear, and sometimes it'll just be that that's where your child is in his or her development. So you don't have to go digging too far, but stay realistic with the possible reasons why your child is behaving a certain way. So when we slow down and start getting curious, we stop parenting the behavior and we start parenting the whole child. And this is where the magic happens. So I'm going to leave you with that today. Don't forget to like and follow and subscribe to whichever channel you're listening or watching from. Don't forget to have a look at the previous seasons. And until next time, stay safe, stay awesome, and we'll talk soon.